Hi guys, in today's video I want to talk about episode 8 of the Wheel of Time, and I'll be reviewing episode 8, but also I'll be sharing my overall thoughts on the series as a whole. So let's get into it. First off, we begin with the cold open in which Lucer and Thelamon is presented, and I find it very peculiar that the showrunner specifically said that it was very weird to introduce us to the prologue from the get-go. They considered it to be very different from the overall tone of the story, and it would make everyone confused to have that at the beginning of the Wheel of Time. But they decided to show us this scene of the Age of Legends at the ending of the season, right when we are expecting to see a big fight with our characters and to drop this huge bomb that the world was once very science fiction like feels incredibly jarring. Usually that type of twist is reserved for the ending of a season or the ending of a movie, just like with Planet of the Apes. You don't do it as you're expecting to see your characters that you got used to go off, fight in a battle, and you get this very bizarre scene in the middle of it thrown right there. Now, talking about the scene itself, I wasn't a fan of the dialogue and the whole lot of changes that took place. Like, I truly do not understand, for instance, why Luz Theron was called Dragon Reborn. There wasn't any dragon to be reborn, because that was the first time the term dragon was used to signify the champion of the light.
And him they named Dragon.
And another thing that I find very strange is the fact that now Latra is Tamerlane. And these types of changes, I do not understand why every little aspect of the story has to be changed. And it's needlessly confusing to introduce the term of Tamerlane when in the show we've already established who the Emerald Seed is and everything about her. And especially since in the books, Tamerlane is a term used for male Aes Sedai, the people who run the Aes Sedai but are male channelers. And it's very weird to change that dynamic when we already know that the Emerald Seed is a woman, a female channeler. Another thing that I didn't enjoy in the dialogue was how the characters introduced themselves. It felt very unnatural and like theatrical. Like, I don't know anybody who would talk like that to an old friend. Like, you don't go, "Hi, Bill, the mechanic." Like, why would they say that, and why would they use all of these terms? Like, you know each other, just speak normally.
Luz Theron Telamon, Aman Sindai.
One last thing about this scene that really irked me was the fact that they very lightly touched upon Saidin, like very lightly, and I consider this a huge cop-out.
Sob Torkat Saidin?
Like, they just said Saidin and they think that that's enough, and I just hate it because this is the basis of the magic system and it's not explained at all. And even Moraine, when she has like the opportunity to tell Rand and explain what Saidin does and everything about it, Moraine doesn't say that she can't teach Rand how to channel, but she says that she won't teach him. Basically, that's what it's insinuated, that she won't teach him how to channel because he might go mad.
Will you teach me how to channel?
I can't. Every time you touch the source, it'll take you closer and closer to the madness.
You can teach me. Surely you... Can a cat teach a dog to climb trees, Rand? Can a fish teach a bird to swim? I know Saidar, but I can teach you nothing of Saidin.
And still there is no mention of the division between Saidin and Saidar. And I'll touch on how the show handles the magic system later in this episode, because this is the biggest issue with the season and the show itself. And the decisions they made in handling the magic system cuts off any sort of stakes or tension in the story. Now we cut to the scene of Rand and Moraine walking through the Blight, and I've said in my last episode that I'll hold my judgment until I see this episode, and I really do not like the way they interpreted the Blight in the show, and I don't like the fact that they always keep certain little moments or phrases from the books and use it in the show, but it just doesn't make any sense anymore in the context of the show. And for example, there's the scene of Moraine telling Rand not to touch anything in the Blight because it's dangerous.
Don't touch anything here. The Blight is a rot.
They sit down, they're not minded at all by the Blight, and it doesn't seem frightening at all. That's a huge missed opportunity for creating tension and suspense, because the Blight should be something terrifying. It should be something that is very uncertain for Rand especially. Because they made it such a claustrophobic place, it's literally impossible not to touch something in there. And because they travel so fast through it and instantly get to the eye, there's no sense of growing tension. There's not like grades to the Blight, and you see that gradually as you move through it, there's more and more danger and more tension. And even if you don't have the Blight be a gradual thing, still there's no tension in the episode, because it seems like anybody could just walk through the creepy forest and get to the eye of the world. We haven't seen them deal with anything. And then we get a scene with Egwene and Perrin, and it's such a waste of time. It's such bad time management, because we could have used it to learn more about our characters rather than use it on this little inner conflict romantic thing. And I really hope that they will not use it going forward in the later season, because they'll just continue to waste our time with it. And another great example of what I told you earlier about things taken from the book and put in the show without any sort of context, we now get a scene with Rand and Moraine, and they both see the 7 Towers of Malkier. And this is incredibly underwhelming, because we did not get the scene of Agilmar explaining to Nynaeve and Egwene the whole backstory of Lan and the Malkieri people and what took place, and we don't have any emotional ties to the story of Malkier. They're just 7 towers.
They anointed his head with oil, naming him Daishan, a diademed battle lord, and they consecrated him as the next king of the Malkiri, and in his name they swore the ancient oath of Malkiri kings and queens. The infant, wrapped in swaddling clothes by the queen's own hand, was given over to 20 chosen from the king's bodyguard, the best swordsmen, the most deadly fighters. Their command, to carry the child to Falmoran. Only 5 of the bodyguards reached Falmoran alive, every man wounded, but they had the child unharmed. From the cradle they taught him all they knew. He learned weapons as other children learned toys, and the Blight as other children their mother's garden. The oath sworn over his cradle is graven in his mind. There is nothing left to defend, but he can avenge. He denies his titles, yet in the borderlands he is called the Uncrowned. And if ever he raised the golden crane of Malkier, an army would come to follow. To stand against the shadow so long as iron is hard and stone abides. To defend the Malkiri while one drop of blood remains. To avenge what cannot be defended.
Also, I don't understand why they are still standing. Just 7 blobs that look very weird. And I know we get a little snippet of what Malkiri means after the scene with Lan and Nynaeve in the last episode, but it truly pales in comparison to the scene we get in the books, because in the books, it's not only to signify Lan's role and Lan's motivations and beliefs and everything, which we don't get in the season at all, but here in the books, Agilmar does incredible world building. You understand how the Borderlands work and their purpose, and you understand the Blight, that it gradually keeps on moving towards Shi'Enar and everything that we know. And the Shadowspawn army is absolutely terrifying when you hear that they can literally sink a whole kingdom. They're that powerful. And everything is set up so beautifully before we get to see the 7 Towers. And when you do see the 7 Towers in Rand's perspective, it's so heartbreaking. and you feel like goosebumps.
In the distance, circled by the lakes, stood jagged-topped hills, thick in the creeping shadows of evening. For one brief instant, the sun's rays caught the shattered tops, and Rand's breath stilled. Not hills, the broken remnants of 7 towers. He was not sure if anyone else had seen it. The sight was gone as quickly as it came. The warder was dismounting, his face as lacking in emotion as a stone.
And then we move on to a scene with Lan and Nynaeve. And guess what? I wasn't a big fan of it because I truly do not understand what Lan is capable of doing at this point. Like, why does he require Nynaeve's abilities to track somebody when he has been with Moraine for the past 20 years? So he has to know, obviously, every little trick that she does, every little tick that she has. And he is very much aware of the blight, like it's his second home. It's not his second home, it's his home, so he has to know it like the back of his hand. But he still requires Nynaeve's help. And the fact that she says that Moraine has a tell, like, what's that? Like, what is it?
It wasn't you who I tracked. It was her. She has a tell.
Like, I truly want to know, what is it? Like, what did you find out that Lan hasn't in the past 20 years? And if you thought I was running out of examples to give of scenes that we have in the books that are taken completely out of context in the show, well, here's another one. Lan tells Nynaeve the speech that he gives her in the books, that he cannot be with her because basically she'll be widowed very soon because he has something else to do, to die for the last battle, to die for Malkier. And in the books, it hits you very hard. That's the only scene that you get of Lan and Nynaeve's romance. But in the show, it doesn't hit as hard because they have already consummated and explored their relationship. And it just comes across as Lan doing the deed and then telling her that he isn't able to, like, be in a stable relationship.
I will hate the man you choose because he is not me. And I will love him if he makes you smile. You are as beautiful as the sunrise.
No woman deserves the sure knowledge of widow's black as her bride price, you least of all. I must check the horses. Nynaeve remained there, kneeling, after he had gone. Sleep or no, Rand closed his eyes. He did not think the wisdom would like it if he watched her cry.
It just seems like Lan is the type of guy that loves them and leaves them. And I don't like the way their relationship is now portrayed because of that. And now we move on to the scene of Rand having a nightmare of Moraine getting killed and then talking to the Dark One. In this scene, I didn't like the CGI. It looked very wonky and goofy. And another thing that I didn't appreciate is that the show constantly uses and forgets that the dialogue isn't a way to info dump us with things, especially in the last episode. And this dialogue between the Dark One and Rand is used so much as an info dump.
The last time you came with 99 companions, far stronger than her, and still you failed. Your father has been dead a long time, boy. What's his name again? Tam Althor, right? Or you really do think he's your father? Heron Mark Blade. Where did you get that?
From my father.
And I know that I said that in the books, Agilmar tells Egwene and Nynaeve the whole story of Malkier, but it's very different to tell a story, like to present us with information in a dialogue through the form of a story being told to our characters, rather than just telling them like the Dark One said, what's with that hair mark blade? Like, that's very unnatural dialogue. Another thing about this scene is the fact that the difference between the dream world and just a basic dream is not shown, and Rand could have actually killed himself and Moraine could have died from that stab wound, but I don't even know what path the show will take, so I don't even know if those things are even considered to be in the show, so I'm just guessing here. And talking about exposition coming in at the last minute, we have Moraine giving Rand a sangreal and just info dumping us with what it means, what it does.
This is a sangreal. It was made before the breaking of the world, created from the One Power itself. When you channel into it, it'll increase your power 100-fold.
You don't do that at the last stretch of the episode in the season finale. You could have explained this much sooner, so we didn't need to spend time now with info dump after info dump after info dump. We then move on to a scene of Egwene and Nynaeve, and Nynaeve specifically says that after the moment she channeled to protect them of Ma Shin, which was weird, she isn't able to listen to the wind.
What do you hear? Nothing. Ever since the day I channeled, I hear nothing.
This is something that I want to touch upon, even though it happens later in this episode. I've seen people speculate that after Nynaeve almost dies and is almost burned out, that's the way she gets her block. But it's obviously stated from this scene that she isn't able to listen to the wind anymore, and it's clear to me that she already has her block. So that scene of her burning out and being revived is pointless, and we'll get more into it as we get to that scene further in the episode. We then move on to our Two Rivers people going up to Min and asking her if Rand is the Dragon Reborn, but she doesn't tell them that. All the soldiers get up and go fight because there's been a signal that an army of Shadowspawn are currently trying to attack Faldara. And then we move to a scene of Moraine and Rand seeing that army, and I find it very strange the way geographically everything is presented to us, because if an army of Shadowspawn are coming through the Blight, which is so tightly packed, shouldn't Moraine and Rand actually interact with them? Because they're coming through Tarwin's Gap, so there's not a lot of space to maneuver through. They should be able to at least encounter one Trolloc, as they did in Away Gates. Just throw a very confused Trolloc at them, because it feels like their walk through the Blight is completely different from the Shadowspawn army's walk through the Blight to get to Faldara. And because of the way they decided to create the Blight in the show, it makes no sense as to how an army of Trollocs are able to go through it to reach Faldara. How does even a Trolloc get through the Blight? It seems unrealistic. Then we move on to a scene of Rand and Moraine finally arriving at the Eye. And why does Rand keep on spotting places that he's never been to and saying that he knows them? He saw Dragon Mountain, he was like, I know this place. Now he sees the Eye of the World and he's like, I know this place as well. It doesn't make sense. And even with the arguments in the later books, it still doesn't make sense for Rand at this point in the story to be able to say things like that. I don't know. I don't like it. Next up, there's a scene of Lord Agelmar and Amalisa, and now they are trying to make Agelmar a little more likable, so you feel something by the end of the episode for him. And I do not understand why they made him such an unlikable character in the last episode, only to make him redeemable now. Why didn't they just use him as a nice, friendly borderlander who explained to us a lot of things, and now you feel bad of what happens to him at the end of the episode? I do not get this type of writing. Then Moraine and Rand arrive inside the Eye of the World, and another writing inconsistency is the fact that Moraine specifically tells Rand that she doesn't know anything about the Eye of the World.
What was this place?
We have no idea. Every record of its existence was purged from the White Tower's libraries by Dark Friends.
Whichever of you goes to the Eye of the World and is not the dragon, you will die there.
How was she so certain of herself that whoever joins the dragon at the Eye will meet certain death? What made her so sure of herself with that, if she doesn't even know what the Eye is and its purpose? And then Rand touches the symbol of Saidin and Saidar and is transported to a dream, a parallel universe I don't even know in the show. And again, I don't like it. This was supposed to be Rand's episode, and this is the big problem in Rand's character arc in the show, because his only motivation was Egwene. And even in this like parallel universe, he still thinks about Egwene, and he still thinks about his possible child with her. And he doesn't do it for his own motivation, he does it for Egwene's motivation, because he wants her to have a free will or a agency of sorts. And it's nothing that pushes him and his own beliefs and motivations and concerns. Is the fact that maybe Egwene will be concerned, or maybe Egwene wouldn't like the choice I made. And it still adds nothing of value to the character. Rand is still not a developed or well fleshed out character, because everything he does for Egwene, at the point that he now thinks what Egwene would like and just does it to please her. And it's strange. This was supposed to be his big moment, his impressive, like kind of accepting of being a dragon. But he is still not motivated by anything other than Egwene.
What about what she wants? That woman who doesn't care about being a wisdom, being a nice guy. That's not the woman I love.
And then we get a very silly scene of the Borderlanders running at full speed to get to the wall. And then we just later see just a line of archers, and that's it. Like, that was their big plan. And I don't understand why they didn't use channelers to help them with this. And I know that the budget played a big role in the scene that we got and the way that we got it. But if we got it just like it was in the books, the army would have been behind Rand, and we wouldn't have needed scenes of them just running or them at the wall. It would have been easier and saved budget by just doing it as it was in the books. Another scene that I don't approve of is seeing Uno and Ingtar start digging for the Horn of Valyri, which was hidden underneath a throne. It sounds weird. I cannot believe that I'm saying this, but the Horn of Valyri hidden beneath a throne. And the whole purpose of the Horn of Valyri and everything else that they find in the books at the bottom of the Eye of the World, those things were tools that were meant and destined for the Dragon Reborn to help him defeat the Dark One. And in the books, throughout the first book, there's been a lot of mentions of the hunt for the Horn of Valyri and the Hunters of the Horn, so you get to slowly understand what its purpose is. And even in the Wheel of Time world, the Horn of Valyri is something mythological, and the moment they find it, you understand how much work the people from the Age of Legends put in to actually help the next Dragon Reborn. And I just love it in the books because it gives the world so much more scope and it builds the world so well. And this is completely lost in the show because a great mythic object is hidden beneath a chair. And another thing is that for non-book readers, this must be so weird. Like, why is the horn so important? Especially since we're not even shown the horn, but whatever. And I just dislike the fact that the show doesn't explain anything and they just rely on you actually having read the books, and they just don't even give us a good adaptation of said books, but they still constantly rely on the books to explain stuff and for you to like constantly autofill information and for like you to understand what's going on in the show. And then we get to the Borderlander soldiers that arrived at the wall, and then we get an amazing shot with the Trollocs, and it looks so bad. Like the CGI looks like a game, like the way they're like, what's that? Like, it's a funny scene. I can give them that. And then we see Perrin and Loyal, and Perrin still hasn't done absolutely anything, and I truly don't understand what these characters are doing in the show. Like, they have done nothing so far, and it's just bothering me a lot, and it'll bother me even more as we get further in the episode. Spoiler alert. Moving on, we have a scene of Rand and Egwene, Rand being in that parallel thing that he's in, and I find it very funny that he asks Egwene what did they carve on a tree so he can make sure that that's the real Egwene, and she starts off really well. I'm like, wow, you carved something cute, and then she just goes on and on, and I'm like, did you guys carve a whole novel on that tree? Like, I really want to see it. I don't think that happened.
Our place for this life and the next, forever.
And then we cut to Moraine grabbing a knife and saying that she'll make the decision for Rand and basically kill him. And this brings literally no tension to the scene, because as soon as I saw her bring that knife, I was like, okay, Ishamael can literally channel and stop you from doing that, especially since you don't see his weaves. And another thing that truly destroys the tension in the scene is the fact that we've already seen other characters injured way worse and recover from it. Like, everybody can heal anybody from basically anything. Then we are shown that Lord Agelmar is killed in the battle, and I do not understand why they killed off characters that will have a role in the later seasons, and yeah, I'm just curious to see how that will unfold eventually. Next up, we cut to Rand and the Dark One, and I've noticed that the editing in the show tends to have shots that linger for way too long, and because of it, scenes play out very stilted and awkward.
So we don't have much time to talk.
Just that.
Well, won't you end this rather melodramatic suspense and tell me?
And then we meet Padan Fain, and we see that he has been in Faldara and the castle itself, and I cannot understand how he got a hold of the ruby-hilted dagger. And the last time we saw the dagger was with Lan, and it would have been so easy to show us the viewers where the dagger is when they arrived in Faldar. Just have a B-roll shot of the dagger with Lan, and we would have been like, oh, okay, or he has it. Or show us that maybe he lost it, maybe Matt stole the dagger, but we get nothing, and then we just see Padan Fain having it, and it feels extremely confusing. And I know I just complained that Beren doesn't do anything, but he does dig for the Horn of Valyria, so I should be satisfied with how they develop the character, right? But moving on, we get back to Rand and the Dark One, and now the Dark One explains to Rand that he can get anything that he wishes, basically, if he only channels, and he slowly describes the process of being able to channel. And this is completely different from the books. He tells him to basically relax and just let it flow through you, and that just wouldn't work in the books, and it's very confusing. Yet another change, and I know they didn't introduce the fundamentals of the magic system, which are saidin and saidar, but still, there's no difference between how a male channeler would channel the one power versus a way a female channeler would. And it's very strange that we're done with the first season and the basis of and the core of the story isn't explained to us. Going back to the whole Horn of Valyria storyline, I like the fact that they said that the horn is pretty important, but as soon as they hear something down the hall, they just put it down. They're not like, oh, you go check and I'll protect this very precious thing that we spent like 3 hours digging for. Whatever. And then we get to see Perrin running around the corridors looking for Loyal, looking for like somebody to tell him what's going on because he's out of the loop, per usual. And then he sees that Padan Fain possibly killed Loyal. And I don't like this at all, because even if he killed Loyal, it's a terrible move on the screenwriter's part, because Loyal is one of the best characters and most beloved character of the Wheel of Time, and if they didn't kill him and it's just a fake out death, that's incredibly cheap writing, and it constantly breaks down any tension that can be built, because we've seen people constantly get murdered but get back on their feet instantly, so it feels like they're probably invincible at this point. Not to mention the fact that he gets stabbed with a ruby-hilted dagger that should kill him instantly, and if that doesn't happen, I'm just confused as to what we're doing. Like, there's no rules for anything, things just happen for like fake tension or like cheap thrills basically. They constantly break lore, they constantly don't know how to manage the magic system, but they do give us these grand moments or shocking moments of, oh, we killed a character that you don't even know anything about and shouldn't care about. And this was a scene in which Perrin could have done something. He picks up an axe, but he just doesn't use it at all.
Ah, there you go. Tiniest push and you choose the dark.
Then Padan Fain says,
We need the dark. We need balance. Balance means that you will turn to the shadow, some of you. Maybe all of you.
and it makes absolutely no sense. Like, where's the balance in the whole situation if you say that everybody can turn to the dark one? Like, you are just preaching about the balance. And another decision that I didn't understand that Padan took is, why didn't he capture Perrin? Like, why Perrin didn't fight back and why Padan didn't capture him?
That's why we sent the Trollocs, not to kill you, but to bring you to him.
In the third episode, we see Dana, a dark friend that calls for a fade in order to capture Rand and Matt because one of them might be the dragon and she wants to be the one to bring the dragon to the Dark One. And Padan Fain has a candidate for that and he doesn't take him. Why? Because he wouldn't have known that Rand was the Dragon Reborn, and also the tavern are very important as well. So why isn't he doing anything? He just blurted this very dramatic speech and left with the horn and the dagger. Moving on to Amalisa and the 4 channelers that are fighting at Tarwin's Gap. I am very confused by the fact that Amalisa got this very important moment when it was Rand's moment. Like, I don't understand why they keep on giving these very important moments that the main characters have to these very random characters that always die at the end of the episode. Like, what's the point of giving Amalisa such a cool moment of defeating a whole army of Shadowspawn when that was Rand's moment, and it would have made more sense because it's the Dragon Reborn. Moving on, we get to see the 5 channelers being able to defeat an army of thousands and thousands and thousands of Shadowspawn. And if we think back on episode 4, 7 Aes Sedai weren't able to defeat an army of 50 people at most. And this really signifies how inconsistent the show is with showing us the power level of the Aes Sedai in general. And I really am bothered by the fact that even Moiraine thought she was fighting the last battle and she just didn't take Aes Sedai with her because they seem so powerful in this episode. And also, it seems like if you have 10 Aes Sedai with you at the last battle, you can just instantly win because they were so overpowered in the Tarwin Gap scene. And another instance that we get in this episode of faking out a death, we get Nynaeve being burnt out and basically dying. We just see Gwen getting very, very sad and just crying, and with the smallest possible weave, with the smallest effort, she brings her back from the dead. And this is a gripe I have with the show from the beginning. Like, I do not understand why Moiraine, for every single weave, she has to do this very elaborate dance that takes her like a whole minute to do just a fireball, which is very easy. But whenever they are showing us healing, it seems like the easiest thing to do. Like they just heal Lan from the dead instantly. They heal Moraine from the Trolloc wound instantly. She heals Tam from another Trolloc wound instantly. And now Egwene. And even if Nynaeve wasn't actually dead, she was grievously injured, and Egwene shouldn't have been able to heal her. And this just destroys any sort of tension and any sort of stakes, because all our characters can just be brought back to life, which they have been for this whole season. And now for the last plot line of that I'll be discussing in this episode, we have Rand finally channeling and choosing the good side. And this is yet again a very underwhelming scene that we get from the Dragon Reborn. Like, I always was holding on hope. I don't know why, but I was holding on hope that maybe they would do something similar with how they did Nynaeve's reveal that she can channel. But the scene that we get with the dragon first channeling is incredibly underwhelming, and I didn't like the visuals, I didn't like the editing, and it overall felt very weak of a moment to give to the Dragon Reborn in the season finale. This was the moment that should have been used to show everybody why this is the Dragon Reborn and how powerful he is, but this is just like an moment, like it's nothing spectacular. And after Rand channels, he just says deuces to Moraine.
Deuces. Alright.
And this is so out of character for Rand. Like, I know these are not the characters that we have in the book, but this just bothers me so much. Like, he would never do that, but okay, moving on. We then see Moraine being alone at the Eye of the World, being sad that she got, I don't know if she got stilled or shielded or whatever. And Lan just shows up, and again, the Blight feels like nothing is dangerous. It's just a spooky forest, because he just is able to catch up to them instantly and go through nothing, interact with no Trolloc or anything. There's no danger. He just sprints to the Eye to save Moraine. The last scene of the episode is our first sneak peek at the Shan-Chan, and I don't understand the constant need to change every little thing that you're trying to adapt. Like, this is no longer an adaptation of the series. This is just something using certain terms and people that are in this series, because the Shan-Chan just don't look that way. Like, it would have been so easier to just have the colors and have them as they are described in the series, because Jordan takes great care to describe every little thing to the last detail. And I don't understand why they constantly have to overlook what Jordan created and bring this weird adaptation, because this is one of the worst adaptations that I've seen in my entire life. Like, it doesn't resemble anything from the Wheel of Time series. It just has the names of the characters and like the places. And I need to see the script, especially for this scene in particular, because I really want to understand the logic behind the Shan-Chan making a huge tsunami to annihilate a little girl. Like, what's the thought process? Do you just want to make them, ooh, the big bad scary guys, like nothing, give them nothing, just that? Because it's all done just for an empty visual. And my overall thoughts to wrap this huge episode up, I am very disappointed with the series. If you go check out my first episodes, you see how excited I was, and now I'm not. Like, this truly doesn't encapsulate the core feeling of the Wheel of Time, and it's a very poorly done adaptation of Robert Jordan's work with a lot of changes that I do not know how one person can rationalize them. Like, I'm just stunned. Like, this is actually impressive how far they've gone to adapt this story this poorly. Like, it's weird. And after watching the whole season, I just don't enjoy the show anymore. And I'm really curious to see what your guys' opinion on the show is. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And let me know in the comments down below. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye!